Okay, so I am going to talk to you about the international solidarity work that the union does. There's lots of other things that I could talk to you about that the union does, but I know our General Secretary is over on the island next week and he will be talking to members and the press, I suppose, about the specific work related to teachers and school conditions. But obviously, if people want to ask me questions about the position, particularly in the in England, for teachers, I'm happy to talk about that. But in terms of the NUT, we have been involved in international work for a long time. A lot of trade unions aren't, some are, but the NUT has had a long-standing position really of understanding that what impacts in our country and the things that happen often come from other countries, and that if we don't link up our campaigns and link with other countries, it makes it very difficult for us to have an impact and change some of the things that are happening. I have bought quite a lot of documentation, and people should take it away and read it because we do quite a lot of work. But this document, which is called On the Global Stage, we produce every year, and it talks about the work that we'll have done over that year. So I'm not going to go through all of the things that are in there because you can take away copies of this and read the specifics that we did during the 2016-17 year. But I am going to talk briefly to start with about a few of our key campaigns really over the past 12 months. So one of the countries that we have become more involved in and linked with their trade union is Turkey. I don't know how much people know about the situation in Turkey, but there have been a lot of difficulties, and particularly for teachers. So teachers have been sacked, they've been arrested, they've been imprisoned, and currently there are a number of teachers who are on hunger strike in prisons in Turkey to oppose what is happening to them. And that's around the regime that's running the country, which is very it is a dictatorship really, is telling them how things should be. And we felt that it was an important area for us to link up with. So we've linked up with the Teacher Trade Union there, but we also are working with members of the Kurdish and Turkish community in England, and they've set up a campaign called Supporting the People of Turkey, and we're very active in that, in trying to build bridges and build links with what is happening. It's very difficult to get in and out of Turkey, particularly during the referendum campaign. We had a colleague who's in the group who went out and who actually ended up being arrested and held for quite a period of time. So they don't like people going in to try and find out what's happening and reporting it back. So it's been quite a difficult campaign, but we are working quite hard with those communities, and it's very interesting work. As I don't know if people are aware, but the referendum result meant that power was maintained by the ruling party, and there's been quite a lot of contention about that, particularly around the fact that quite a lot of areas votes were missing and people felt it was very undemocratic. So I think it will be a situation that is ongoing, and people probably would find interesting to look at and find out about what's happening. The other, another area that we're involved in is through our work with Education International. So people may have heard of Education International. It's a very big organisation which links up trade unionists from around the world, and every 4 years they have a big conference which moves around. And one of their campaigns particularly is around something called the Journey, the Global Education Reform Movement and Privatisation of Education globally. Now I'm aware that here you have a private and a public system, as we do in England, but in some parts of the world there is a move to, particularly in poorer countries, to privatise their system and to take money from very poor communities really to charge for education. And we're working with Education International on quite a big campaign to oppose that and to say that education should be free, it should be for the public good, and we shouldn't be allowing private companies to go in, particularly into, as I say, some of the poorer countries, and take huge amounts of money out and charge ridiculous sums really of families. So some families are paying over half of their monthly salary for school fees, all go to private companies, not giving a very good quality of education in our opinion. And also with them we're working on a campaign around Pearson's, which is a company which produces a lot of test materials, produces a lot of IT stuff, has links into some of these private companies, but also, as I say, we are opposing some of the work they're doing in the UK around testing, because we have a very oppressive testing regime. Alongside that, so some of that work is around negative sort of campaigning around we don't want you to be doing these things. We have linked up with the American teacher trade, or one of the American teacher trade unions called the AFT, who some of you may have heard of the Chicago Teachers Union. So a few years ago there was a massive strike in Chicago. The teachers were out on the streets for quite a period of time to oppose some of the things that were happening, mainly around privatisation, attacks on their terms and conditions. And they did a mass organising campaign, which was fantastic. So they had mass engagement, and the majority of members in the union were out on the streets actively involved, to the point, and they built massive public support. So not only did they get lots of people out in a very engaged membership, they had things like when they were getting on the buses on the day of strike action, the bus drivers were saying, "Oh, you don't have to pay, we support the Chicago teachers, so you get on, don't pay, we're backing you all the way." And they'd have massive rallies, thousands and thousands out on the streets, and parents would be coming out and students to support them. And they had a really good structure of organising. So as a union, we thought that would be a good thing for us to look at. So we've been doing lots of work, and we've done visits over to talk to them about their organising work. And that has become the basis, really, of us becoming what we call an organising trade union rather than a servicing trade union. So we're not just there to service our members when they need us to defend them. We should be there to organise them so that they're actively doing things to oppose things that are happening. And, talking to your the NUT person here, there's an example of you doing that here. You took to the streets with leaflets around something that was happening with your, threats to your pay, and part of that campaign will have had an impact on the outcome of that. So you can do it on a small scale, and you can build from that and do it on a larger scale. So that's, as I say, that's another one of the campaigns that we've been involved with. We also do regular delegations to countries, and that's because we think it's important that as national officers and executive members, we often travel around the world visiting places. That's one of the jobs that we have to do. But it's really important that our teachers that are in our schools get to meet teachers in other countries and understand some of the things that are happening there, the difficulties that they face, but also to learn from the work that they are doing. So there are a couple of places where we send delegations regularly. So one of them is Cuba, and that has been a very interesting experience for our members. We have very large delegations, generally oversubscribed, and they go for a week in their half-term holiday, and while they're there they meet with the teacher trade union there, and they visit schools and meet with teachers. That's the general basis for their work. And they all come back infused, I have to say, and for us, the other thing that happens is they go as an NUT member who might have been to a couple of NUT meetings and, but generally just gets on and does their job, but they come back and they want to engage with activity with the union, so they become activists within the union because they see things that are happening elsewhere. And there is a report, and I'll put copies of it over there, of the last delegation that went in 2016, but it gives you a flavour really of what the teachers did there, what they found out, and the work that Cuba is doing. I mean, for people that don't know about the situation in Cuba, they invest a huge amount in their education system. 13% of their GDP goes on education. In the UK, we do 6%, so that gives you a comparator. They invest a huge amount into it. They have very limited resources. They struggle to get things in. So when I went, I visited a school and I asked about IT and they said, well, we only have a couple of computers. And when I went to look at the computers, they were old BBC computers, which were in schools when I first started teaching 27 years ago. They just wouldn't exist in the UK now. They just don't exist. But they had a couple of those that have very limited internet coverage, those sorts of things. So there's, they don't have a huge amount of resource, but actually they deliver really good results. They have a very engaged school communities. So I went into a primary school. The children were extremely articulate. So they would get up and talk to us for long periods about what was happening and explaining it all very confidently, and really obviously enjoyed education and saw the importance of learning. But they also do a broader range of things. So they do a huge amount of arts and music and dancing. So they did a lot. They took us outside. We all had to go outside and dance because that's a really important part of their culture. But they got up and sang songs for us. They thought that was really important. So they invest in a much broader curriculum. But they also have very highly respected teachers. So teachers are really highly respected in the country, and education is run by teachers. So when we ask teachers, so, you know, well, what would happen if, let's say the government said to you, oh, you've got to do this in your schools and you don't really want to do that, and they just sort of looked at us and just said, well, they can't do that because we're teachers and we decide what happens in our schools. The government aren't allowed to impose directly anything onto our education system. It has to be the teachers and the teacher unions that decide that. And when I say that in the UK, we all go, wouldn't it be wonderful if that could happen here and we had a government that didn't interfere in ours so much. As a union, we do quite a lot of work to support what's happened. So currently we're involved in a project buying braille machines to support students with visual impairments out there. And also we do some work around teaching medical students English, because the other thing that happens in Cuba is they have they have a very good NHS system. They also have very highly trained medical staff, and those medical staff go out and do lots of supports in areas when there is a humanitarian crisis. They will send their doctors over to support in those areas, so be it either through conflict or through some natural disaster, they will send them out. So we do work funding English teaching for some of their medical students. And then the other area I'm going to talk about is Palestine. So we send 2 delegations of teachers to Palestine every year. I've been to Palestine once. I'm leading our next delegation, which is going out later in the year. And we do a lot of work with the GUPT, which is the teachers union out there. We've also produced teacher materials, which are all available on our website. And we work with the Palestine Solidarity Campaign around some of the work that they're doing. And one of the areas that we are currently engaged in and working on, and which I'll talk to you about a bit more really, is the issue of child prisoners in Palestine. So I don't know if anybody in the room's been to Palestine. I don't know if any of you know anything about the situation in Palestine, but it's a very complex situation. And I actually became involved in the work around Palestine because we had a speaker come and talk to us at a conference about Palestinian child prisoners. And I was quite shocked when I listened to what they said. So at the time, I think my daughters were about 14 and 12. And, you know, I was thinking, well, this could be my child. When this person was talking to me, this could be my child. So